I'll put the agenda here in the chat. I'll be moderating today. And it looks like the agenda itself is pretty short. So yeah, I guess we'll just go ahead and dive in. The first thing would be updates on testnets, testing, development of different things for Deneb. So I know we have been working on DevNet 7, and there might have been some chatter about DevNet 8. Does anyone here feel compelled to give an update or would like to?
Yeah, I can go with the update. So we've had DevNet up for a while now. It's mostly stable. We have almost every client combination represented there. I think Aragon's yet to be added, but that's the biggest one that's missing. There's a issue tracker. I will share the link in a little bit where we're tracking the different state that each client is in. We also have a bunch of open issues there. Once we're figuring out the root cause and the patch, we also just update the issue tracker. In the meantime, anyone who's working on tooling for 4844, please feel free to test it out against this DevNet. Blob scan's been updated as well to include data from 4844. I think we have something like 9,000-ish blobs at this point, and this is still as of yesterday, but there's like a blob spammer, and there's like a whole day's worth of blobs that should be indexed at some point, I guess. And we seem to be doing okay there.
Cool. That's exciting to hear. Do we want to just briefly touch on DevNet 8? I think that was the one that was slated to have like the full Cancun / Deneb EIP set. But maybe we're not quite there.
I don't think... Sorry, go ahead.
Quickly before we go to DevNet 8, one thing I noticed on DevNet 7 was when I let my Lighthouse Geth node full sync, and it got really slow just when it arrived at the head. So it would be nice if all clients could check their performance right around the head. I think the issue was that you needed to download all the blobs and verify the blobs of like the most current blocks. And so it would be nice if other consensus layer clients could test that on DevNet 7 already. Anyway, sorry, DevNet 8 now.
Yeah, so the link for the DevNet 8 specs are there. We'll either Barnabas or I will try and make sure that it's up to date over the next days. But the idea is that we want to first have Hive tests looking good, and then we want to be able to run like a local testnet, and then we'll spin up DevNet 8. So I think there's still like a couple of phases before we're ready to coordinate that.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Cool. Okay. So sounds like maybe we want to look at performance on 7, if your client's near the head, and anything else anyone wants to bring up right now for DevNet 7.
The forward syncing is still possible till next week, Tuesday. And after that, we're going to be outside of the period. Then only checkpoint sync will be available. So if you want to check something with syncing from Genesis, you have like a few more days to do.
Also, if some client has an archive flag where you just never delete blobs, I think that's the perfect time to be testing it. And if you don't want to test it, let us know and we'll test it.
When you said forward sync, you mean with blob expiry?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, that's actually a good thing to see live, see how it works once we go through that first window.
We done it in DevNet 6, I think, and from that point on, you have to do checkpoint sync. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to sync anymore if you don't have any archive nodes.
Okay. Well, so yeah, client teams who are listening, take note. And yeah, otherwise it sounds like things are moving along. So that's exciting to hear. Next up on the agenda, we have this note about continuing the P2P discussion. I think I think it was the last 4844 implementers call. We essentially had this note around gossip sub, P2P, and like part of how this works. So my understanding is that basically there's like a flood sub mode that kind of runs by default. And there's like some concern that, it will slow performance of things once we add the much bigger messages with the blobs. Does anyone here have anything to add? I think some client teams are looking into this feature, maybe if it could be enabled or disabled more granularly than it could be now, different strategies around publishing and things like that.
So I was hoping to catch up with Adrian from our team before this call, but he's off this week. I did a little bit of digging though, and I found some work that he and Akihito from our team had done around this, and they had made an implementation of like a smarter flood publishing strategy in Rustlib P2P, and had seen like a 30% improvement on like latency in publishing for like messages at around like 50 kilobytes. So that's just like a bit of like the scale context.
Cool. Yeah. As I understand, this isn't a blocker for 444, but definitely something that we'd like to ship at some point sooner rather than later. So yeah, sounds like we can maybe just wait, see if H has anything to add. Any other clients thinking about this or have looked into this issue?
Actually, we have a list of improvement that we want to do with gossip sub protocol, but we are discussing that the first thing that we can do right now is to disable the FAT publish, because actually we can still enable the FAT publish and change how it works, but that requires the sharing, right? It requires the patch, but so we can just disable it right now, like because it's the fastest thing that we can do, and we can improve the fast publish protocol later.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds like that might be it on this libp2p topic. So we'll just keep moving through the agenda. Next up is this E-star upgrade name. Let's see, there's a this is this comment here. So yeah, we are here. We have enough visibility in the next hard fork that we can start to think of a name. The EL fork will be called Prague, following our scheme, and following our CL scheme, we would like to pick a star in this universe, and or maybe not even in this universe, but some star, and the name should start with an E. So I'm just looking at this comment. It looks like there's an ETH Magicians post here. People like Electra. It says Danny liked Enif. Danny's not here though, so I'm not sure how strongly he feels about that. I'm assuming this is Evan Van Ness suggested RI. There's a couple different posts here. So yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to like chime in their opinion, but we're not going to spend much time on this, at least synchronously. I'm seeing a bunch of Electras in the chat, uniform Electras, and we can call it Electrog. Thank you, Guillaume. So anyway, I suppose if you really want to chime in, I'll put these posts here. where there's been some other discussion, although it seems like people here really like Electra. And yeah, maybe we'll just go ahead and assume that. And if we all say it, everyone else will have to say it as well. Cool. Thanks, everyone. EIP. I'm looking at this next agenda item. Comment. What? I don't know where we're talking about this. Well, okay. Interesting. Has anyone thought about EIPs they would like to get in for this next fork then? This is on the agenda. I think Danny probably added this. He linked to 7002. So I think that, oh, sorry, there's a few more down here. So 7002 execution layer triggerable exits, 6110, which is, I think this is moving the deposits, like reworking how the deposits work. There's 7251, the max effective balance proposal. I don't know if Mike is on the call, but that's something he's been working on. And okay, I think Danny put this on here. He just wanted people to be aware of this. And if there's anything else that you would like to start to get into the discussion, especially with respect to like the CL or any like cross-layer features that would also involve the CL, go ahead and add them to this issue. I'll drop the link in the chat. There we go. Verkle and VLS. Yeah, those would be nice. So there's some chatter in the chat around some other ones, but I'll just let that be for now. Point being, start thinking about it. You know, presumably we're shipping Dencun very soon, you know, in the next couple of months, and we will get to decide, or at that point, we'll get to think about what comes next. So that's for that. And next up, we'll just move to general, more like research spec topics. One is here, I think from Matt, who wants to talk about Web3 signer standardization. So I think basically there is a standard for this API, and maybe let's see, is Matt on the call? Yeah. Do you wanna give us an overview of this?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So the goal here is to basically standardize a remote signing API similar to the rest of the APIs that we have in the specifications. The reason being is that there's traction around remote signing and integration with clients and all these other things that we're working on. We want to make sure that it's pretty easy to integrate essentially remote signing into the consensus layer clients. So the goal of this is to take what we already have in Web3 Signer, basically clean it up a little bit, and then put it out for kind of a comment and feedback period. And then whatever we decide as a community, we will basically standardize back into Web3 Signer. And then, of course, going forward, we can maintain that against new forks, new functionality, and we'll be working out of that kind of standards repo as opposed to just setting a standard within the product itself. So yeah, basically the goal of this was just to bring attention to it. We're going to work to open up a repository in the Ethereum GitHub for these remote signing APIs. And when that's done, we definitely want a little bit of feedback and comments to make sure that we have a pretty reasonable view of the API. And then it's, again, it's intended to be long-lived, and we'll continue to update it through hard forks and through spec changes so that when clients go to integrate remote signing, they don't have to go through a lot of headaches with Web3 Signer. They can go straight to the standard. So that's pretty much it.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. This seems like an API that is, has a good amount of adoption. So the general strategy of, making it a little more polished and kind of more formally supporting it, I also think it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, thanks for the notice. If anyone's listening and you rely on this, take note. And yeah, come back when there's an update on the API. Okay, so next thing on the agenda, there's an issue from DAP Lion. Actually, this is a PR. So let's see, is Dapline here? I'll just let you take over. Otherwise, I can give a little summary as I understand
Yes, I'm here.
it. Okay, hey.
So, yeah, the background of this proposal is that, as you know, different items of the roadmap, most namely SSF, are much higher to deliver if we have a big state, a large count of indexes. So we have different proposals floating around to deal with it. If we don't deal with it, we need different crypto and other stuff. There is good proposals around this. Anyway, so the point of this proposal is we could very easily, for the NEP, potentially, limit the churn. It's questionable if it's positive for Ethereum and it's positive to have such a big count of indexes. So we could limit the churn and then buy us some time to deal for the Electra fork for a more proper solution, like increasing max effective balance or having some in protocol consolidation. So this would just cap the max churn so that we don't find ourselves with a 2 million validator count in about 9 to 10 months. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's not, it's not a wild option. I do have to wonder, like, if we were to do this, it does kind of like marginally affect small stakers more, just because like essentially you're capped. Like now everyone slows down in terms of like exiting. And it seems like if you have more validators, then that's more or less of an issue for you. But yeah, on the other hand, we don't want the set to be 2 million validators, like you said. So, yeah, I don't know if anyone else has had a chance to look. This is something we could do. I don't have like a much stronger opinion on it at the moment.
So I'm aware the discussion is for Electra, but these could be considered for the NEP. Otherwise, I don't think it has that much of a use case.
Yeah. It seems like because we don't want to be changing the Deneb schedule this late in the game. And I do kind of agree that it might not matter as much if we can't do it that quickly.
So I would say technically, this is a very simple change. Probably just a couple lines on every single client. I think it's most about getting it right in terms of security and political implications.
Those are important concerns. POTUS, you have your hand up? Are you talking, POTUS? Can anyone hear him?
I hear something very, very...
Yeah, it's like really tiny. Okay, yeah, try that one more time.
Yeah, now it should work. All right. The issue that I find is that since this involves a political discussion, and it's very, very unrealistically that's ever going to happen that we're going to get into consensus on this by the NEF. And since this seems like a very simple change that we could actually put in a just purely consensus hard fork that we can just ship quickly, I'd suggest looking into other alternatives. And if we don't find anything, we can just ship this. I would prefer personally to use a different PR from Daplion. I would prefer that we actually compromise ourselves to quickly ship the reuse of indices. After or with this, we could just think about this max EV increase, because that would certainly allow us to like reduce the number of validators quickly. And I think that's a cure more than just as Danny put it, as a band-aid.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, this is like something we can do, and it's almost like, you know, if we found ourselves overnight in a terrible situation of too many validators, then yeah, we could like think about this. You know, it doesn't seem so urgent. We need to do it in the next like, you know, couple months. And then when we're on a longer time scale, we have other options to think about as well. So it's more just probably a process of considering all the different trade-offs of these different options and picking the one we like the best. It doesn't feel like we should be thinking about changing the Deneb schedule like now. Like if anything, we should just be like shipping Deneb like in the next couple of months.
So I don't think it's realistic to think that we'll ship so fast, but hope I'm proven wrong.
What I do think is that we need to lose the fear of having consensus layer only forks so that we can actually deal with these issues.
I don't know if there's like fear. It's just like, even if we do a CL only fork, it's just so much overhead, like even for just the CL devs on the call, right? So, you know, it's just not something to really take lightly, but certainly if we got to like an issue, if everyone was convinced that like the network is going to be in a really bad place soon, then we could have a CL only fork soon. It doesn't seem like we're quite there yet or anywhere near it really.
I guess just to test the waters, now we're here. Is there any strong opposition from anyone on the idea of capping the churn?
The only thing I would say is if we're doing something in parallel, like for example, max effective balance, where we know we're going to also be touching the size of the set, then, you know, we don't necessarily need to be doing other things. And that would just probably come down to the timing of these various features, right?
Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, but we've brought up these other issues of max effective balance and reusing validator indices, but neither of those are spec'd out to the degree that we would need to implement them quickly. Correct? So like this is really just, I mean, this could be done quite simply. This is almost like difficulty bomb pushing back level of trivial. But yeah, I would just say this seems like a much easier thing to do, to buy us time for those other things, because I don't think they're spec'd out.
Yeah, and I want to point out, if say the chain grows to the 2 million and then we find ways to shrink it, there is some dead baggage that will have to pay forever until we get to a point where consensus clients can deal with state in a very significant way than they do today. Because as I'm aware of, every single client needs to have the full state loaded in memory to do anything basically. So the dead weight in the state has a cost.
Mikhail?
I personally don't think that reusing indices will help us that much here, as if the activation queue will remain full as it is today. So we'll see these 2 million validators, as Lion has mentioned, quite soon. I don't see how the reusing
Misha,
indices
reusing
will help
indices
here.
is used with the is tied with the increase of max effective balance. So these two together reduce drastically the number of validators.
Okay, but sure. But before that time, before we have this max effective balance increase, we can get to this number quickly, assuming that the queue will be full. I mean, like, we will not deliver max effective balance before these 2 million validators in the set, before we see them in the validator set. That's the point. So it is like a kind of a countermeasure. So I mean, like, and if we have these 2 million validators in the validator set, it would mean that in terms of attestation and attestation aggregation, the load will increase 3 times, or yeah, 3 times at least. I don't know how this is sufficient, how bad it is in terms of aggregation. But from what I've heard, that the aggregation is almost at its capacity today. And if we drop more validators on the network, it will just, can get really worse. And I don't believe that we will have a hard fork to deliver this feature only. Even if it is a CL hard fork, it requires software upgrade. So it requires coordination of node operators and all this stuff, and all the related things.
Yeah, I think unless it was like very obvious, like almost an emergency, then the temptation would be too high to like slip some other stuff in, and then suddenly we just have another regularly sized hard fork. But yeah, I mean, again, this is like card to keep on the table. I don't know if we need to make it. I mean, it feels like we don't need to make a decision right now, and certainly I don't think we need to think about putting it into NEB. So we'll just continue the conversation as things evolve. Obviously, if we come back in 2 weeks and like the state is twice as big, that's a different conversation.
Yes. So again, assuming that the activation queue will be full all the time, which is not unrealistic assumption, I guess. And if we don't do something about whether the speed of growth of whether set, so we will get these 2 million validators in 9 months. And yeah, if clients are fine with that, I mean, like, and coping with this load, then that's probably fine, really, and nothing to care about. But if not, then yeah, I think we should pay more attention to thinking on whether to do this or any other countermeasures really quick.
That point, you have something to say?
Yeah, so I see with this PR, we have to choose a value, and choosing that value comes with an opinion that can be controversial. But I think it's important to accept that before the Bitcoin chain started, we chose a base reward, and that's a very opinionated decision that clearly motivates the market into staking more or less. So if we took that opinionated decision at the time, I don't see why we can't do that again, especially as the landscape has changed dramatically from when the Bitcoin chain was designed and today. So yeah, I want to motivate, or at least disperse the fears that this is not such a controversial thing that we have done in the past, and we could do that again to adjust to market conditions.
Wait, sorry. Were you? Maybe I misheard you, but something. Are you trying to link like the reward schedule to this change with the tournament?
Yes. If we chose a base reward that produced widely different APY that we have today, we may not see the queue as full. So that's a direct incentive for it.
Okay.
That's causing these big
Sure.
states.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so again, touching that knob, you're now touching like our security spend, which is just something we want to like very carefully think about. Which, like, zooming out some, this is like all of these different proposals kind of touch on like either very like core security or economic concerns, or like otherwise very political concerns, which is why they're just they can get kind of hairy quickly.
True. My point is, on the design phase, when the base reward fee was chosen, if we could look into the future and see the growth of the Bitcoin chain, I'm not sure that that value was picked. like I don't know if anyone anticipated that there would be such a demand for staking. So acknowledging this reality, just we are not going to change anything. We're just going to slow the inbound. It doesn't look like such a dramatic change.
Right. I mean, there is a curve that's like responsive to demand, right? So like there was some decision made. It's not that it's like flat, right?
I mean, I would say I agree that the reward curve is the most natural thing to adjust if we want to change the amount of ETH.
I don't think he was necessarily saying that we change the reward curve. I think he was just saying that it was a sort of political decision to begin with. And that this is a much less dramatic decision. This is simply limiting the rate of incoming validators. It's not saying you can't stake or anything. It's just the growth is quite high.
Well, but effectively it does change. Basically, it means that you're giving preferences to those who have already staked over those who want to stake. So it is also an economic decision. So the fairer way to adjust it is to adjust the reward curve to get into new balance rather than giving preference to those who have already staked.
Ansgar?
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly say on this topic that there have been some thoughts in the past to just basically completely change the way we basically pay validator rewards to more explicitly kind of target specific participation sizes and amounts of ETH stake. I do think kind of just shifting the reward curve might be a good kind of just pragmatic first step in that direction before we make the kind of bigger, more kind of deep-rooted change. But even before then, maybe I would say one thing that would be very just useful to do in the very short term would be to just start communicating that the way we pay out rewards for staking might just change in the future. So no one should make a decision about staking the ETH relying on that basically the payment schedule will still be in place a year from now, 5 years from now. I think basically preparing the community for that this might change in the future would be very valuable to do in the short term already.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And like, one way we do that is like having these conversations on these calls. So if people are listening, then they can start to understand that maybe something will change. So that being said, I think we might be done with that topic, unless there's any final comments. Otherwise, I'll open this up. Are there any final remarks or things not on the agenda anyone wants to discuss? Otherwise, we can go ahead and wrap up a little bit early today. Okay, sounds like no. I'll go ahead and call it. Thanks everyone for attending, and we'll go ahead and close.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.